I appreciate everybody joining us this morning. My name is Riley Shelton. I've been with Rev1 for almost 4 years now. Well, 4 years, almost five. I'm an associate on the investments team focused on enterprise software, just kind of helping source diligence, source deals, due diligence, and help with fund management. So looking forward to spending more time with you guys today and hoping that you get to learn more about Michael here at Nichefire. So Michael, please, let's just start it off with you talking a little bit more about your background, kind of where you're coming from, all the things leading up to, the start of Nichefire.
Sure thing. So once upon a time, I was a digital marketing manager, and I did a lot of work with like analytics tools and listening tools. For those that aren't familiar with like what social listening is, those are like analytics tools that allow you to like query all sorts of social media content, whatnot, to do research essentially. But I also had like the entrepreneurial itch early on, and I wanted to start my own business. And so I actually kind of broke off from that, started doing my own consulting work. I was a sole proprietor for a little while, just doing that sort of digital marketing strategy for work for small businesses, especially in the greater Cincinnati area. And then eventually met my current co-founder, Khalil, and my other co-founder, Steven. Steven was a friend of mine from college too, so I knew him beforehand, but we started an agency together called Millmark Solutions, and we had the pleasure of supporting upwards of 30 different small businesses in the greater Cincinnati area, and very quickly burnt ourselves out trying to do all that sort of agency consulting work, and went back to the drawing board. And one of the common threads with a lot of these projects that we did was doing like competitive analysis audits for a lot of these customers, so like looking at competitors, sort of that sort of thing. And so when we started Nichefire, so this is back in 2017. When we started Nichefire, it was technically started as a competitive analysis like software. Essentially, we build an AI that could look at a brand's social media content and then compare it against any of their competitors, help them find white space opportunities. It was a product that just came from our own pain points, but we did that for a couple years and we couldn't get the traction we wanted to out of that. But we did have a big customer. It was U.S. Bank, and so they were like one of our marquee customers that we worked with, and they were pivotal in helping us found what Nichefire is today. And so fast forward to 2022, they came to us, as we were like sunsetting that competitive analysis product, came to us and said, hey, we use every analytics tool, every social listening tool you can imagine. We have access to any of them. If we're not using them, we could. We have some of the best consultants. We have some of the best agencies that we're working with today. But none of them can help us understand the things that we don't know to look for. So it's like those unknown unknowns that they're struggling to understand. And so that kind of sparked the idea for us. I mean, a lot of enterprises, we learned, were actually struggling to do this kind of work as well. And it started a whole new trajectory for Nichefires today is, more or less using cultural signals, cultural trends, to understand what that future impact is for businesses to help them find growth opportunities. And so, needless to say, helping them find like what those unknown unknowns are. And well, the rest is history there.
That's a great segue into kind of talking a little bit about the journey that Michael's been on for the past 4 years. And he's coming with, from Cincinnati, a little bit different startup ecosystem there, but very similar to Columbus and Cleveland in a lot of way with the entrepreneur support organizations and such. But maybe you could kind of give some background to, who helped you kind of get your start once you felt, this is a problem worth solving. Where did you start first?
Where did I start first? That's a great question. Actually, I don't know if you're familiar with the Alloy development company in Greater Cincinnati, or formerly HCDC. And so for several years, we had just a small closet of an office that we worked out of there, but they're more or less like an incubator. And so they helped us got us a business coach that helped us really think about how we should be building our business, how we should be really focusing on, on the right, pain point areas. And, in our super early days, I'd probably say they're probably some of the most pivotal resources we've been able to get out, in that area. And we were working with them, when we uncovered, that cultural intelligence piece that we do now. But also too, just like the greater Cincinnati area. So Centrifuge, they're one of our investors as well, but they're also one of the big entrepreneurial hubs in there. So they've been incredibly resourceful for us. Overall, I mean, the Midwest ecosystem has a lot to offer. And one of the things I'm really like I really enjoy about the Midwest ecosystem is that there's a lot of care and effort in actually helping build good businesses rather than just rapidly scaling valuation and that sort of thing too. And so there's a lot of genuine mentorship and and help that you can find in the Midwest and especially in Ohio.
Yeah, I appreciate you just giving a little bit of detail on that. Would love to also kind of hear about, where the business is today. And, we invested in Nichefire at the end of 2024, December. That was 500K from our Rev1 funds and then 200K from our 7170 Angels group that Melinda Gloriosa manages. And just would love to kind of hear about what that experience was, raising that round, what that meant, and kind of where the business is going right now.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting raising our seed, like the seed fund that we did at the time that we did. I mean, the post-COVID economy was just atrocious trying to raise funds in, and so I'm very, very thankful for the investors, but especially Rev One kind of jumping in and supporting our business at that time. And we've been able to make some massive strides with not only the IP but also too with the commercialization of the product. I mean, we've learned a ton just over this past year. And we sell to enterprises as well too, and that they're not easy to sell to. I'll say that. And so we've done we've been able to figure out and fine tune exactly how do we sell to these folks. We've been able to demonstrate growth, new logos, new opportunities. So I mean, just from the past year, we brought on new business with the likes of like Cracker Barrel, Lululemon, Keurig Dr Pepper, Roche Pharmaceuticals. We have opportunities now with Delta Airlines, with Inspire Brand. So I mean, we've been able to pick up some significant amount of traction just from help from investors, help from the ecosystem, and what we're really aiming for now is to get into Series A territory in the latter half of 2026. We're on track to end the year at in the 900,000 $1 million in ARR range. So that's our key objective right now, and we're in the home stretch. I will say that. So
It's been awesome to watch that growth. Like I said, we've known him for 4 years, been working with him for a little over a year and a half now. But it's just, in this phase of investment, early stage investment, pre-seed, seed stage investment, it's really hard to understand what is validation from the problem to the solution to the go-to-market strategy. And I think they're in a space where that's even more difficult. They're tackling marketing budgets. Those are large. They're ambiguous. The key stakeholders vary across different functions. So I think it would be great to talk a little bit more about how you've dealt with that challenge. I mean, you have so many different stakeholders across different types of companies. How are you trying to narrow in on what's the biggest problem?
that's a great question. I'll start off with a little bit of background too, because that story with U.S. Bank kind of bringing us on. I mean, one of the things that we learned from that is that enterprises to this day, they're stuck with heavily reactive tools. So a lot of the tools that they use now, you have to know what to look for to get any value from them. So we find teams spending anywhere from hundreds of thousands of hours doing discovery work for new opportunities, whether it's new products, innovations, or it's content, or it's new positioning, whatever it might. Conversely, I mean, they'll go seek, work with like a McKinsey or a Mintel or a Kantar, and not only exorbitantly expensive, but but they're consultants. So it's one-off projects, it's manual work, it's a lot of it is focus group research based too. So a lot of that data is anywhere from 6 to 12 months old, but they're spending $1 million for a 3 to 4 month project with the likes of like a McKinsey. So it's there's definitely room for disruption in this. And so we've been hearing loud and clear, like, what are some of the pain points that some of these people have on the teams that we work with? But dialing it back a little bit, because like when we initially kind of came across this pain point with U.S. Bank, there was a couple different use cases that presented itself to us. And U.S. Bank was especially interested in more risk and reputation focused areas. But as we started to kind of do more research, talk to more businesses, really hone in on who our target market was, we also kind of uncovered more of the opportunistic, use case from that. So, are there marketing, content, and use cases for building resonance that marketing teams, comms teams, and whatnot can leverage? But then also too, are there opportunities for innovation, new products and capabilities that those companies can lean into based on their understanding of consumer culture. And so the risk and reputation piece, we over time learned like, hey, there's not a ton of budget here. And there's also a lot of tools that are doing a great job in this space. So like the difference in impact that we make is kind of more marginal. So they're kind of okay secondary stakeholders for us. And so we kind of focus more on that opportunistic piece. And then we kind of dialed it down to like the marketing teams and whatnot that we were kind of trying to vet out and learn more about. Kind of had the same sort of reaction as well as like, this is something where there's a lot of, I wouldn't say hubris, but there's a lot of pride in the kind of creativity that comes from the content that they build. There is also not a ton of budget in comparison to how much they to what they allocate towards tools versus staff and agency consulting and media budget and stuff like that. And so they're more of a secondary stakeholder. What we found is that those consumer insights leaders, the people that are driving like the foresight decision around product packaging, positioning, whatnot, they're the ones that are just really, really needing this sort of capability in their tool stack because they're struggling to understand, like what is demand going to look like in 2 years and 5 years, even 10 years. And so that's where we started to really lean into, started optimizing like how our service helps them, how it can deliver more prescriptive insight to support them. But what we learned too is that when we sell into them, the consumer insights groups, they have a lot of influence in other teams in the organization. So those marketing comms teams, for instance, they have influence there, but also to brand teams, innovation, R&D, and that sort of thing. And it became kind of like a nice starting point to then sell into, and it becomes like a land and expand opportunity for us. So get more access to budget and so on and so forth. I know that's kind of long-winded, but that's a lot of learning from that.
No, that's a great backdrop, and I think maybe just to paint the picture a little more clear, like give an example of like somebody on the insights team or the foresights team, like what their day-to-day and the workflow kind of looks like with your tool or without your tool, just to help. I think for me, I didn't really know this space. I'd never really heard the term social listening or cultural listening prior to this investment. So it was a lot of learning. And I think just understanding the day-to-day really helped paint that picture better.
Actually, I'll use actually a example that we heard about the other day. So one of our customers, they're a major like food and bev manufacturer. So they were trying to do some research to understand like, are you familiar with like protein water? Have you seen some of that? Yeah. So they're trying to understand like, okay, is there an opportunity for us to create a protein water product? And they're thinking about launching something in 2028. And so they were doing some initial market research around that to kind of paint a picture like, so this was a super small research project. They spent upwards of like $75,000 to $100,000. Spent about 6 weeks of time, interviewed 32 people, over the course of of about a week, to come across the same level detail of insights that our platform could, deliver in about 30 minutes. They were able to tell us that directly on a call, saying like, hey, this was incredibly profound and validating for what we have. And so it's kind of starting to get to the point where, can this be positioned as like a potential lead-in to help you refine that kind of market research need that you have there? Can it help inspire, exploration in new areas, new opportunities, right? And so that's the kind of like the day-to-day. They're knee deep in research. They're knee deep in, using these other tools to kind of help validate. They're knee deep in reports that they get from, other team members and their agencies and stuff like that. And so, being able to just come to the table on a silver platter with some sort of prescriptive idea and insight is what they've been really looking for.
Thank you for that, Michael. It's really great to hear, and the platform is awesome. It's come a long way. I appreciate all the times we get to peek in and see the demo. They're doing it with a small and mighty team, and I think it'd be great for you to kind of tell us a little bit more about that team that's gotten you here to this point. Share more about the journey and when you first met them, things like that.
So we have 5 full-time employees, right? So, and 3 co-founders. So my co-founders, Steven and Khalil, I've been working with them for almost 10 years now. I've known Steven since I was in college. Khalil I met shortly after college, and well, actually while I was in college, and then, but we've been working on this sort of work for about 10 years now. And then we also have two other people. So our CTO, his name's Rayhan, phenomenal expertise in the AI space. And then we also have Abby, who's more or less like our customer success lead. She's has a strong depth and like industry expertise here and that sort of thing. I'd probably say like one of the things that really makes the team strong though and mighty is the fact that like we couldn't be any different. Like so Khalil, like Khalil for instance, so he's our CRO. When I met him, this was like 2015. When I met him, he's a large, very jovial guy, and he just has this magical ability to be able to make friends out of anybody you meet. But he's also very coachable. He's also very optimistic. Somebody that is great fit on that sales and prospecting side there. Conversely, you have Steven, who is just an absolute wizard with numbers, with the analytics behind these things. So he's a tinkerer by trade. He's a tinkerer as well. So he's kind of like learned how our technology works, learned how to kind of do a lot of development and coding stuff himself as well, even though that's not his position, but he's been able to support our dev team significantly from that. But he brings that sort of realistic, down to the ground kind of expertise to kind of make sure that we're matching expectations. Totally different people. And I think that's kind of part of the magic behind like how a team like ours works is that we're all very different. And we have a lot of respect for the expertise that we bring to the table. So that's a little bit about our team. And of course we have some like contractors and stuff like that we work with.
Yeah, and of course, it's not just the internal team and the contractors that get it done. It's all of the ideas around strategic partnerships and business development. And I know that Nichefire has been doing a lot of that lately. So maybe you can share more about how other businesses are enabling your product to further serve your customers.
So are you talking more like in terms of like partnerships or, okay. So let's put it this way. Maybe I'll explain a little bit about like how the platform works, that sort of thing. So what we do is we've taken signals from all over the web, search, news, web traffic data, social media, you name it. But we're able to identify and forecast signals and trends that come from those across any area somebody might care about. So we call these cultural trends because these are coming from consumer culture. Common interests, common beliefs, common behaviors that consumers share. You can find online. That's how we're classifying those, and we're in real time flagging those for our customers and helping them understand, like, hey, here's how they evolve over the next 1 to 2 years. And so when we work with a customer, like the main objective that they're getting from us is insight into, over the next 1 to 2 years. Is there an opportunity for this kind of new product or this kind of new offering? Is there content that can resonate with them more effectively? Is there positioning we should be considering here, right? So they're making decisions based, for their future position based on the sort of insights they can derive from that. And so we work with a litany of different partners to help service that. So, our platform, like the can of worms that is like the back end data, like all the partners that we bring in that help us source all of that. So we have a mass amount of different like whatever we're called APIs. So these are like I think it was like gateways to collect data from another platform, vendors, partnerships we've been able to develop to help build out those data stores. Like it's kind of like the backbone of how we kind of ground the service. We also have a number of agency partners that we collaborate with too. So these are agencies where we've worked with them as like a potential channel partner, where they become experts in our platform. Then they go up to bat with new business and bring Nichefire along to help them service that. That's actually something new that we've been starting to work on there. We have a couple agencies that we're working with now on there. A couple other things too. We're working on like integrations with existing tools. So I mentioned social listening before. So there's tools like TalkWalker, BrandWatch. These are different BrandWatch. Those are different tools in this space. And so we've been working on ways to integrate into those platforms as well to help deliver this kind of capability. It's another kind of channel partnership opportunity there. But then we also have some partners in like here locally that are helping kind of shape up like what the future of our service looks like. So we have There's a company called Huckle that is based here in Columbus that we also partner with too to help enrich the data we bring in with, demographic audience segmentation data that help you not only understand here's the opportunity, where it's going, but also who are the people that are driving that. So we have a couple partners like that too.
Thank you for that. It's so good to just hear about how much support there is around building a business, and building in a vacuum is certainly not always the best thing to do, and it happens more often than not. So just going back to fundraising and kind of the start of Nichefire, truly trying to scale. Can you talk a little bit more about how your role has changed when you decided to go out and raise money? It went from just going customer interaction, trying to build this product to mostly fundraising now. It feels like probably like every 6 months you're talking about what's the next plan for the fundraise. So talk a little bit more about how your role has changed.
Oh, it's changed very drastically. Um, I'll give you an instance. When we initially started this, so like take us back to like 2022, 2023. I was incredibly hands-on with everything. I was a key lead on our sales calls. I was the primary account manager for all of our accounts, drive partnerships, right? On the technical side, I was heavily into the day-to-day, driving real-time vision of what the platform needs to do, real-time feedback on that. But as my roles evolved, so has like the complexity and the problems and the technicalities like behind the scenes of the platform have evolved as well too. And so with those sort of complexities, I want to make sure that we have like the smartest people on the job. I don't even want to pretend that I'm the smart person to address some of those. And so when we brought on our CTO Rayhan, I mean, he's done a magnificent job structuring, organizing, and putting together a roadmap that makes sense for our backend. And now my job is kind of elevated to more focusing on, hey, here's the things we should be thinking about over the next 1 to 2 years, even 3 years, and so on. So I've kind of brought in more of like the external input of here's what's going on in the market. Here were some significant trends are happening. Here's what our competitors are doing. Here's what customers are saying, and using that to inform like what that future roadmap looks like, and kind of delivering more vision, that sort of thing. On the sales side, I mean, I still involve myself in sales, but more like strategically. It's interesting when you go into a call and it's the CEO that's on the call, like it changes the dynamic of that quite a bit. And so it's nice. I'm a nice addition to the call when you have like a VP or someone senior on that. And so I kind of join in, strategically for that. But Khalil and Abby, my 2 other team members, do a fantastic job of bringing them home and kind of delivering on that. Then there's also the fundraising. That's a part of that. But I mean, my overall job is to make sure everybody on my team has exactly what they need. So think of me as like the company's big cheerleader, essentially. So
That's great. If there's one thing you would tell yourself going back to the first day you went to go out and raise dollars, what would that be? What advice would you give yourself as a leader?
specifically in the fundraising side of things. Okay. I've done a lot of pitches. I'll say that. And the thing that's going to drive impact the most is delivering, just being as clear and concise and concrete as to what you do and why it's important. You want to make sure they understand, like, hey, why does this matter? That's why painting up like your problem very concretely is really important. The one thing I would also say too is like, make sure to get out of your own head a little bit, because you're like, I was so enveloped in like all the stuff that we do, and so I'll talk about things like I have this bias and this assumption that like everybody knows what I'm talking about, but when you talk to people, like they have no idea what you're talking about. You didn't even know what social listening was until I told you what it was. And so now, not to insult any of our investor friends in here too, but when you're trying to kind of build a concrete story, tell it as if your audience is about 5 years old. So that'll just make it just that much simpler for them just to absorb that information and understand what it is that you do. Because that was the thing that I struggled hardest with, and I think is one of the things that I really could have fine-tuned early on. And then as you start to kind of build your story, build your case, be able to define concretely as well the impact that you have made, whether it's through traction, revenue, some sort of ROI that you've delivered for somebody, that really matters. And then of course, talk about your team and that sort of thing. But at least for me, those are the things like clear, concise, concrete, exactly what you do and how you've made an impact, I think is some of the things that I've had to learn how to do over time.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and it's probably something that everybody in this room hears a lot from us and a lot of our advisors here. So it's just always good to reiterate that. So maybe just to kind of head towards the end of this Q&A, talk a little bit about what you're excited about this upcoming year, 2026, whether that's customer related, fundraising related, or product initiative related.
Let's see. Okay. So we have a number of customers in our pipeline that are kind of slated to do, that we're slated to do work with in 2026. So we just wrapped up a proof of concept with a big pharmaceutical company, and we're going to be working with them here in expected to work with them here in 2026. And so we're going to be doing a lot of new updates with our forecasting and all sorts of fun stuff. We also have some other big names like Georgia Pacific, Delta Airlines, and Inspire Brands, Procter & Gamble, ConAgra that we all have kind of lined up to start work with in 2026. And so there's a lot of commercial opportunities that we're excited to start working on there. But I got to be honest, the thing I'm really excited about too is some of the stuff that we're doing with our platform. Now there's a lot of jargon and stuff on the back end that I'm excited about that helps improve efficiency with our platform. But some of the long-term, there's two key long-term vision pieces that we're working on here. One is, so I mentioned Huckle. So Huckle is going to be a strategic partner for us. We have a couple others to kind of help layer this in. But what we're trying to deliver to the market, here in the near future, is a true disruptor to that traditional consulting model, right? With the power of AI and with the alliance that we're trying to build here, we're trying to build that capability to be able to identify and prescribe and be able to help people understand where the future lies, all in one instantaneous report or insight that can come directly from Nichefire. Traditionally, this sort of stuff takes many, many months to produce. Imagine having that sort of McKinsey report that's 200 pages long, but be able to have that instantly in your inbox every week. Maybe not 200 pages, that's a little overkill, but have that in your inbox instantly every week. Have multiples of those across anybody in your organization. That sort of scale is truly disruptive for that sort of model, and that's what we're trying to work towards and deliver. The other part of this too is there's a significant opportunity for some of those small and mid-sized businesses. And so a lot of the infrastructure that we're carving out and building out, we'll be able to repurpose and kind of deliver a sales model that would work for small and mid-sized businesses. So it's kind of weird because you see a lot more startups and whatnot start with a small business and it can grow to enterprise. Some don't even look at small and mid-sized businesses. But the way we've been able to see this is that our work with enterprises kind of carves out the infrastructure, all the data and resources we have, that makes it so that we can offer an incredibly affordable service for especially CPG brands that are generating less than $150 million in revenue. There's a ton of those, and so that's kind of where we're trying to build into in the future there.
Thank you so much, Michael. And lastly, I know you do a lot of thought leadership in the space. What are the most important elements, it can be on a data level, that you think that are relevant for the cultural listening? If an AI model is going out and chasing data, what are the most important elements?
Well, so it kind of goes into a little bit of our methodology and how we do things, right? So one of the things that we've kind of uncovered in the why the methodology works is because we're trying to understand and map out all the different types of interactions that consumers can have online. And the ones that contribute to culture the most are things that are areas where consumers will demonstrate their interests and intentions. So we look at search traffic data, we look at web traffic data. We're trying to explore how we can get prompt generative AI traffic into ChatGPT and stuff like that too. Those are great data sets to understand where people demonstrating their interest because they're going in there trying to learn about something. That helps you understand those intentions behind that. Then we look at how consumers like share their opinions, how they express themselves through like social media data, forums, blogs. How are they talking? How are they expressing, communicating with one another in a community? So that's really important a factor that we take into account. And then the third piece is influence. So we look at things like news, podcasts, influencers to help understand how opinions can potentially be swayed based off of the media that people are consuming. And so we look at this as kind of like a trifecta of resource to understand how these trends emerge. And essentially like our forecasting model pretty much like picks up on a signal, cross-validates, across that framework to then build out like a really robust forecast. I know that's a lot of jargon and whatnot, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, really appreciate you sharing that, Michael, and coming down here and spending time with us.